I think I hate you more than I hate Jettas.
Nostalgia reigns again by 2025, if not right now.
Pennsylvania has a subset of car culture called PA Dubbers. It's the Volkswagen car scene in the Keystone State, but here's our take on it. Get a generally clean Jetta or Golf, take the quarter panel off, buzz all the paint off, and piss on it so it rusts. Now, get coilovers from a dirt mall vendor. It's best if he's covered in lesions. Now get a detachable steering wheel and take it with you to your job at Big Salami Pizza and Sub Shop. Saw your catalytic converter off, saw the mufflers off, saw everything off, and replace it with 3-inch piping. Camber your wheels so they chew up your tires and fender linings. Shift only at 5,000 RPM. Hold your license plate on with one cross-threaded bolt. Keep a snowboard rack on year-round, even though you can only make it down green circles. Remove your back seats. Get a girlfriend with daddy issues and a diseased dog. Get her pregnant. Put the back seats back in. And all the while, wish you could afford an M-car. 2003 BMW M3. The dream car of every PA dubber. When I was working just out of college and making just enough to not qualify for cash assistance, I was obsessed with status, hyper aware of America's caste system, and embarrassed by my Toyota Echo, a low-class car. And I, like other young Pennsylvanians, viewed the propeller as a sign to lift me out of the working poor hole, at least superficially. I thought about trading in my Echo, a reliable, simple, efficient, ethical car, for a used 3 Series basket case. If it meant my presence wouldn't be brushed aside when I arrived, wherever that might be. I would still be a moody, shifty, daydreaming Cole County loser inside, but you couldn't tell at first. And that's why I don't really like 3 Series BMWs. Because they remind me of me. And the BMW is the fever dream for anybody trying to buy their way onto a higher societal rung. And now it's 2020. The most affordable time to do that. Time to talk about Aughtstalga, or Aughtstalga. This is nostalgia for 2000 to 2009. The aughts. Aughtstalga. Cars with coil packs, variable valves, engine management, OBD2. Cars that are compatible with modern ECU tuning, but lack nanny state traction control, interventionist electronic throttles, and driver-distracting multifunction displays. Or even displays entirely. See, my people, who grew up in the 1990s, are inflating prices of cars from that era. So, where can new enthusiasts go in 2020 to find affordable power, besides a WRX? Hello, 3 Series BMW. Hello, 2006 E46 M3. A car from a year when you bought airsoft guns off of eBay and paid for them with a money order. 2003 E46. Brought to you by weed dealing profits, when selling weed was lucrative. M3, the official car of flying into a blind rage when someone calls your sexual orientation an adjective congruent to your car's engine arrangement. This is a 2-door, 93-octane, high-compression, front-engine, rear-drive, manual-only, asterisk, we'll get to that, tight, sharp-steering, growly, flat-turning, long-geared sport coupe with a high top speed, asterisk, thanks to long gears. And it's driven by the most clownish bedwetters, the likes of which I've had the displeasure of sharing oxygen. E46, the official car of, yo, meet me at Sonic at 7 p.m. I'll race you anytime. Signed title. What am I, a fucking pussy? Race me and find out. And if I lose, I'm pulling out my high point that I scratched the word Glock on the slide. I drive an E46. My sister is a prostitute. And an Uber driver. I drive an E46. My brother washes dishes at Carrabba's and sells heroin on a smoke break. I drive an E46. It smells like a hookah bar and lo mein. My bed is a Facebook Marketplace mattress on the floor. I sleep on it with no fitted sheet. My pillow is a block of Pink Panther house insulation stuffed into a Crown Royal pouch. I own a 4K TV with no stand. I balance it between two grocery baskets from ShopRite. My vacuum cleaner is a t-shirt and a stiff square of cardboard. My nightly dinner is Tina's microwave burritos. Hers salt and vinegar chips washed down with Keystone Light or Gears iced tea. Some people truly believe in the status that a BMW offers, like the Queen lightly touching your shoulder with a sword. And that's because PA dubbers want to believe they're an oppressed class just because people don't respect their Volkswagen GTIs. So they want something respectable and they'll go broke to own one. But if you really think about it, does a BMW actually improve a person's social standing in any particular way? Because just like fursuits, if the person inside is still a jerk, then it's only a lateral move, right? And maybe BMW drivers get unfairly ragged on, because I don't know if the whole launch control on this car helps things, since it only amounts to burnout mode. I mean, that's more or less what you get if you engage the mode and then slam on the gas. It's the car show equivalent of those birthday party noisemakers. And yet, it's hard not to want to do it, because this car wants your abuse. It has no safe word. It goes to the SMM club looking like the Mesh Prince of Bel-Air. A guy buys an M3 and launches it into his girlfriend's life like an unwelcome dick pic from a stranger. Because you know your pleasure is now secondary to the maintenance of a German car from 17 whole-ass years ago. So it's back to the grocery store romance novels set in the 1700s when people sent dick tapestries or whatever counted for flirting back then. The E46 M3 has an electronically limited top speed of 155 miles an hour. Now, I've seen forums claim 170 with it gone, I don't know, check YouTube, blah, blah, blah. But a 0 to 60 time of 4.8 seconds off the back of a 3.2-liter inline-six making a factory 333 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque in the US is pretty good. Output is slightly higher in Europe thanks to catless headers, but you're still working with the BMW S54 engine, which is the culmination of the company's naturally aspirated inline-six, which is the S50. It's a car that seems to acknowledge the spotty reputation BMW drivers have in the United States and accepts that there's really nothing you can do about it. Not because BMW drivers are inherently bad, but if a driver is bad, someone is more likely to be noticed in a car like this because of how it looks. It's aggressive. It's purpose-built. It's a point we've made before in a previous video, but it bears repeating here because honestly, you're probably not going to remember a Camry that cut you off in traffic, but a dark blue BMW?
Just keep climbing, go.
And at BMW prices, there's a connotation of privilege, that people drive this way because they feel entitled to it. But today, I'd wager that most BMW drivers on the road, at least in southeastern Pennsylvania, are going to be gearheads looking to wrench on something that isn't their brother's old Corolla. Take the owner, Sean, for example. When he first started looking these cars up, they were at the bottom of the depreciation curve. But the insurance company wanted to charge him through the roof on the assumption that Sean, who was 16 at the time, would race it, crash it, and die in it. So he ended up getting a 2001 325 Ci. Only to have that car get hit by a drunk driver, so not even his fault there. He upgraded to a 2002 330 Ci, modded it, autocrossed it, put in over a year of restoration work, and then a car thief, in a different car, sideswiped it en route to stealing another car. A BMW driver gets his car wrecked both times and it wasn't even his fault. Which brings us to this E46 M3. It belonged to a guy who owned an auto shop, but it had been driven into the ground by the guy's son. Sean was able to get it for a decent price by negotiating the price down over the course of several visits, and then convinced the owner he would take care of the car, not hoon it for clout. He impressed the owner so much with his maturity that he finally got the family price on it. And so, here it is. A BMW. Responsibly owned, respectfully driven, with only 100,000 miles. Sean deleted the secondary air pump, which would normally cause an emissions failure. But since it's also not being used anyway, it's coated out with a block-off plate that allows it to pass emissions. There's a tune that adds an extra 5 or 7 horsepower, maybe 15 maximum, but it's really for shifting smoother at lower speeds. There are aftermarket LED front turn signals, a carbon fiber rear splitter, a rewrapped forged fiber overlay steering wheel, and an Avant 4 head unit meant to look like a factory BMW navigation system. But you still get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and all that fun stuff. It's an automated manual transmission. This one, it's the one from hell. Look down here in the pedal box. Looks like it's missing a clutch. It doesn't have a traditional automatic brake, you know, the big minivan one. This is a manual transmission, but it doesn't have a clutch, so what are we doing here? It is pointless to drive this car in automatic mode because it shifts like someone learning to drive manual. Those are Sean's words. Like someone who hasn't figured out the let off the clutch, press in the gas at the same time, and does the move where you let off the clutch entirely, the car decelerates, and then they get on the gas. That's how this drives in automatic mode. This is a very, very early automated manual. And it doesn't really hunt gears, but it picks a gear and then just kind of stays in it. And then when it shifts to the other gear, you go, oh. You keep this thing in manual mode and then just shift like you're playing Outrun or something like that. Where does the time go? It just feels like yesterday when we were filling out our Y2K bug-out bags in case we rolled back to the Stone Ages, and food became more scarce than a decent CVT, and we burned each other's CDs for our birthdays and for the end of school years, because giving each other new things is a substitute for lost youth, since time is the one thing we can't gift each other. And 2003 was an awkward time, and yet the early aughts were a 1999 reskin. Nu metal was pretty much pop grunge. Donnie Darko was the new Fight Club because teenagers needed to feel intellectual about something. MTV gave up on music, and Beavis and Butthead. So you just watched The Daily Show and Adult Swim in your dorm room. You had to make a concerted effort to tell the difference between Michelle Branch and Vanessa Carlton, and the risk of buying the wrong CD and pissing off your girlfriend. God help you if you bought the live album. And there was just enough technology to create a whole new generation of introverts. The early years of any new decade have no meaningful distinction from the one before it. Like a high school freshman, it takes time for a decade to find its identity. You could argue that no one really misses these cars in the traditional sense that they wish these things would come back, especially the technology. Sure, there were gems in those years like the Honda S2000, Subaru Outback XT, Subaru Forester XT, and even something cheap and simple like the Mazda Speed 3. It felt like a dying gasp of fun, fast, affordable cars before everything began to take on the bubbled shape of a car that intimidates no one and excites even fewer. To feel Aughtstalga is to long for the last days before SUV sippy cup curves became standard. But here's the thing. The can always gets kicked down the street. By 2025, people will miss the cars of the mid-10s. By 2030, we'll miss the first years of the 2020s. Because this is how it works. This is how it's always worked. We can't escape the intrinsic human desire toward regression, to return to what was always a simpler time in the mind's eye. But while nostalgia is a lovely thing, it would lose all meaning if we could go back to those days whenever we wanted. It has meaning because we can never get it back. Not truly. We can only relive it in a shell, which were the products of the time.
Can I shift my gears and just drive? Can I shift my gearbox? It's a manual one. Nostalgia reigns again by 2025.